Got it. We are live on as an unusual hour of Monday at 7 p.m., which is kind of cool for our Retry Live. Joining me today is Rithvik Rai, who is a doctor. He doesn't like me saying Dr. Rithvik Rai, but Dr. Rai, Rai, sorry, Dr. Rai.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry for messing up your name. So,
No, it's fine.
Rithvik, no, but I know we've been trying to get together for the last couple of months, and finally
Yeah,
we've
have
got some
actually.
time to fit
Yeah.
your very, very busy schedule as a doctor, as an author. People like you kind of make my head spin because you're so driven and determined, and I don't know how you find all the hours in the day to get the stuff done that you do. But I'm so happy that you could join us. How are you?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Nick. Thank you. I think you're really kind. I think you're over exaggerating the effort I put in, but I've been doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I was really looking forward to this, and I'm glad that we're finally here.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get everyone's schedule, but we did say you're a doctor, and I know your schedules are, man, what's going on? How hard you guys are working and the hours that you're putting in. So again, grateful that you could join us right now. Could you
Thank you.
could you just introduce yourself?
Yeah.
You know, and what you do and your qualifications, your author, the books that you've written, just so people in the community can kind of
Sure.
get a brief introduction. Yeah.
Sure. Well, so basically, I'm from India. I've been born and brought up in India. I did most of my schooling, my med school, and throughout my years, I was in India. And I moved to the UK about 2.5 years ago. And it was basically to pursue my.
Oop, lost your audio. Hold on a second. What's going on? Lost your audio. Oh, yeah, I've lost your audio. I don't know what's happened there. Or you can hear me? You can hear me. So no, we've lost your audio. We might have to jump in and out if you, or yeah. Maybe just jump in and out of the link and see what happens. I'll keep it all live. Oh, I heard a click. There we are. Yeah.
Fine. So I just disconnected from the Bluetooth. Okay, that's fine. So sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah.
So you've been here for 2.5 years.
Yes. So I've been here for 2.5 years. And so basically, I just did my med school in India and I started practicing medicine in the UK. So I never technically practiced medicine in India. So what I'm doing right now is what we call as internal medicine training. It's basically where you narrow down in the field of medicine more so than so we don't do a lot of surgeries, obs and gynae peds, the other bits, we don't do it anymore. So I'm just doing what we call as medicine right now. And currently I'm working in Cambridgeshire, and it's been really good. And I've just started this new job. For the last 2 years, I was actually working in A&E in a place called Swindon. And then I just moved to Cambridgeshire now, and I'm really enjoying the job. It's much more of responsibility, if I had to say, just maybe one step higher. But so that's with me in my medical career. But the important thing that I probably would like to talk about is the writing and things of that sort. I mean, to be honest, most of the people that I know find it very ironic that I enjoy writing so much, but I hate reading. I do not read any novels. I don't read storybooks. I've never read them in my life, but I enjoy writing. And it was not a habit that I had since childhood or anything of that sort. I think I picked it up quite in 2019. I was going through a very difficult time in my life. And I think more so than not, you are able to express and, pen down things, I think probably better than you're able to express it by words. And that's how I actually started writing. And then, one thing led to another. And then that's how the first book came out. And it was actually meant for someone. I was going through a very difficult phase in my life, like we all do. And I remember the book that I wrote for this person. I remembered it was like a long bond or relationship that we had, and it was coming to an end. And I felt personally that we had been through so much, or at least I had been through so much, that I thought that it was very important for me, in a very selfish way, to put it down in words, so that maybe 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, I could, revisit that time in my life and be like, oh my God, this was the person I was, or this is what I went through. And it was not in any way for the other person to realize, what they meant to me or anything of that sort. It was very selfish, if I can say that. It was a very selfish writing. And then I, to be honest, didn't even intend it to become a book. I was just writing it to, just pass through this hurting phase. And then one thing led to another. And then I realized that chapters were forming, and then, stories were forming. And then I was having a chat with my elder brother. And when I finished the book, and I was like, see, listen, I was just writing for fun, and now the book's done. What do you want me to do with it? And my brother was kind enough to say, you know what, I think we should try publishing it. So just put it out there, and it's okay. It's not going to hurt anyone. And luckily enough, I got a publishing house, and they were happy with the story, and they wanted to publish it. And that's when I really felt, you know what, I could actually do more of this. I really felt loads of satisfaction and content with, it was almost like I had put out a piece of myself. I think it takes a lot of, okay, courage might not be the right word, but it takes a lot of personal acceptance to put something out there, which is very personal for it to be available for people to read, whether it's fictions or, biopics or anything of that sort. Mine obviously was not a biopic, but so that's where I picked up this writing habit. And ever since then, I've never put my pen down in the context of writing. I've always been writing something. And then the pandemic hit, as we all know, in 2020. That's when all of us had loads of time in our life, didn't we? That's when I decided to write another book. And that's how I started writing my second book, called The Golden Touch of Life. This one was very personal because it was, I wrote it as a dedication to my mum, who sadly passed away when I was 5 years old. So it was just me revisiting those emotions and, just going through those emotions and accepting a lot of things that had happened in my life. And I thought, because the emotions were so personal, I felt it would be better if it was like in the form of poetry more so than a story. And that's why the second book is more of what we call as the free verse poetry. It's wherein you randomly can't take out a poem and read it. You'd not find the context. You have to read it chapter by chapter. It's basically a series of poems which unravels one massive story. So that's where we are with the books. So far, 2 books down, hopefully for more.
It's really interesting, your story and how you got into writing and how reading for you was difficult as a child. And I'm not sure if it was difficult or something that you weren't interested in, but remember when you first told me that, it really resonated with me because growing up, reading was, I found, very, very challenging. And children in my school, where we were reading a book in class, and we would have to, everyone would read a paragraph, and it would come around to me, and I could almost remember the fear, and I had to read one word at a time, and it was really slow, and I got teased for it. And I later found out that I had an astigmatism in my eye, and I could literally only focus on one thing anyway. And you know how people read 3 or 4 words ahead of it in a sentence. And a mild form of dyslexia. And so I struggled with it. And I'm almost 52 years old. So when I was 8, people didn't pick up on things like that. And I got told that I was a slow learner. I got pulled out of my mainstream class, and I got picked on by a teacher. And she put me in a closet in between 2 classrooms when she was frustrated with the way I was reading. So you can imagine the trauma that caused me as a child growing up with reading. And also having a very intelligent father who read almost a book every couple of days. For him, when he read the words, he saw the story. For me, I just saw the words. And in my head became other stories that would jump away from the book.
Yeah.
So it would be a line of a book of, like, say there was one book that I actually did, like, I think it was called The Children of Flynn. It was a fantasy book, and it was really cool, but I really got into that, and I could stay in the stories. But I can remember other books. I would read a few sentences about, finding a dragon in a cave. Yeah. Then all of a sudden I would be on that dragon going to my world, and this story would kind of come up in my head. So I just couldn't read books. And then movies became a thing for me. So I could jump into the movie, and visually that would kind of keep me in. And that still is my life today. I have a hard time reading a lot of text, but I'm very good with documentaries and YouTube, and that's how I absorb things.
Yeah.
But I also, because of those things, I'm sorry to get into this, but
No,
it's
it's
really
really interesting. Yeah.
also, I was also very good at charming my teachers when I grew a little bit older. And I had one teacher, he was an English teacher, and his name was Paul Jacoby. And I was about 15 years old, and he pulled me to one side, and he knew something of the history of my family, and he knew that there was a kind of a history of writers through my father, who was from
Sure.
England.
Sure.
And he said, Nick, do you want to be a charmer and a BSer all your life, or do you want to knuckle down and actually like create something?
Yeah.
And he inspired me to write some short form poetry,
Yeah.
some short stories, and it really brought a confidence out in me that even to this day, I don't think I've refelt that confidence that I had as a young 16, 17-year-old writer in high school in Canada when I was
Okay.
writing some short stories that were really beautiful. And hearing your story, it almost, this is why I wanted to talk. I almost wanted to reignite something in me
Yeah.
about the beauty of how you use writing to deal with some challenging times. So maybe let's get into that. So
Definitely.
without you kind of please don't tell anything you don't want to tell, but what inspired that first story,
Yes.
and what were you dealing with inside that
Yes.
made the writing on pen and paper actually help you cope or deal with those challenges?
Yeah. So I think personally, when you actually sit down, I mean, if you have ever written before, I think you'd probably agree with me. When we sit down to write a piece of work, no matter what the work is, I think we go into it thinking of a certain version of ourselves. Each character that you build or develop is based on more so about, like, the image that you have of yourself and the image that you have of others. And as the story unfolds, or when you come towards the end of it, you start realizing that, oh, this is what probably I was. Like, retrospective, you get loads of retrospective information. And more so than like more often than not, I have noticed that I finish a book and realize that I'm a totally different version of myself than I actually thought that I was. And I always found, I think you brought up a very important point where you said about expressing, things that are very personal and things of that sort. I always feel when we communicate either by words or actions, no matter how calm and composed you are, it is still quite impulsive, in the sense you might be a very calm and composed person, but your actions and words are very impulsive. But when you write down your emotions, you really have the time, and it really helps you to dissect each emotion. It can be the worst of emotions, like it can be jealousy, it can be possessiveness, but whatever it is, you are able to understand, like, why is this person going through this? And I think more so than not, that's why you realize there are so many characters in books and movies who are absolutely horrible people, but you understand them. You may not agree with them, but you understand them. And I think that comes with the patience of dissecting the emotion as to why this person did this. It might be a good thing or a bad thing, but why they did it. I think that field of exploration is given to you a lot in like writing and things of that sort. And I really found it very fascinating. And I think I used to be okay, extrovert is probably a broad term, but I used to be very extrovert like. But I think after I started writing, I realized there are so many shades of myself that I'd rather know, rather than trying to figure out different people and trying to please every XYZ that comes in my life. And I think it's not that I don't have friends, or like, it's not that I don't that I'm not interested in meeting more new people, but I think it's it's a form of therapy, if I could put it simply. It's just a form of therapy, and it's something that is forever. Writing is always forever. Like someone said, you may or may not be an author, but you can always be a writer. So
Mm.
and so yeah. Well, if I have to go into the details of the first book, like I said, it was there was this person that I was really close with, and we knew each other for almost 7 years. And we were at that stage of our life where things were not clearly working out, and she wanted different things in her life. And me, even though I wanted different things in my life, I think I was at that stage where I was trying to blend into that vision of her so that, I can still seem like a person who can blend into her life. And I was going through a lot of denials in my life. I was not willing to accept loads of things that was happening. And it came to that one final day, like I mentioned, where I decided to write. It was the last time that we were meeting, and our and she was quite stern on her decision then that this would be the last time that we speak, or that I have a chat with you. And that kind of changed my life as to, okay, I have to accept this now. So I
Mm.
went from a stage of complete denial to a stage of acceptance, and saying that I accept this. It hurts really bad, but I accept it, and I want to write about this. I don't want to write about how great I felt or how great you made me feel, but I want to write about this, no matter how hurting it is, but I want to write about this. Um, and that's why I got into writing that book. And she did read it, by the way. Uh, she did read it.
Are
And
you
she
guys
did.
friends?
Well, no, we're not in touch anymore, unfortunately.
Okay.
But
Send her. Did you send her a signed copy?
well, I did actually.
Yeah.
I obviously did. So
Yeah.
with a
Beautiful.
handwritten note inside, which is very personal.
Yeah.
But she did reach out to me after she read the book, saying that I liked reading the book. But that was one of the last conversations we had, and it now makes me feel happy when I think back about it. I'm glad that I think, like, in 7 years, I think I tried loads of things to try to get over that specific relationship, and nothing seemed to have worked out. But then
Mm.
writing really got me out of it. So and that, yeah.
What were your ideals of what a relationship should look like then? Were they things that you were brought up with, like with marriage and children and all of those things? Like, what were the ideals that weren't you that were not being conformed to?
Yeah, I think you really bring out a very valid point, especially because we come from India. In India, as you know, um, there's loads of different traditions and loads of things that bind you and, like, alter your perception of love and what love is and what this person is. I think the other person, more so than me, was very she was quite clear about what she wanted and what she did not want in her life. But me, on the other hand, I was quite of like a very chaotic teenager. I was very rebellious. I was
Mm.
like, it's my way or the highway, and I would not accept anything other than what I felt I deserved in life. Not in a bad way, but just trying the best that you can to get everything in life. And My idea of relationship back then was that if you really love a person, like, if you really really love a person, it has to work out.
Mm.
It was quite of a, what can you say, like a Bollywood movie kind of a perception of love, which I think with time and age has changed quite drastically. And you start to realize there's so much more than just love and sacrifice. I mean, even with sacrifice, that comes as a part of love, but I think there's so many more different dimensions, and I see myself not so chaotic in love anymore. I'm very easygoing and calm, and I understand it, or I would like to say that I understand the shades of it much better. And I'm not very personal about love anymore. I'm more of understanding about what the other person's, because the other person's form of love can be completely different. I'm willing to accept it now, which I was probably
Mm.
not earlier on. So
Now I'm gonna hit you with the $1 million question right now is what is your idea of love now?
what is my idea of love now? In a simple way, if I had to say it, this is just me thinking about my current situation, my current relationship, is when the other person is sad, if it hurts me as much as it hurts them, or maybe more. And when they're happy or when they're successful about something, and it gives me more happiness about their success than they are probably for themselves. I think that's what love is. If I had to put it down in a simple sentence,
Mm.
is, I think, uh, prioritizing the other person's happiness and sadness. If not, obviously, more than yours is probably a long shot, but just as much as yours. I think that is something that I prioritize now. Where I think for me, love right now is not uh, these are my priorities. That, and if the other person, if they do blend in it, it's fine. If not, I'm gonna find someone else. I don't think I'm in that stage in my life anymore. I'm willing to blend and understand that, you know, different people come from different areas. So, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Also, different people come into our lives at different times, and our definitions of love, you know, it's, for me, it's always a spectrum of change. You know, romantic love and family love, and just new loves, and love for my for friends, and for people in my inner circle of recovery. You know, just love means a lot of different things. I now do have a fairly good definition of love. Um, it's very simple, and it's not from me. It's from a guy named Chuck Chamberlain, who's a long time, he's passed away, but he's a long time person in recovery, in a 12-step recovery program.
Right.
And he wrote this book called The New Pair of Glasses. And he basically says that the definition of love for people like me anyway is love is action from your heart out. It's like a one-way street.
Yeah.
It's actions towards a person, and I love his little caveat is with no expectations of anything in return.
Exactly.
And that blew me away, because for me, love was always transactional.
Yeah.
And love was like, you know, doing things for somebody,
Yeah.
expecting something back, like
Yeah.
buying presents, cleaning flats,
Yeah.
taking people on holidays, like all these things that I thought were love, because I wanted that person to say, Nick's the best boyfriend in the world. Nick,
Right.
can I give you a back rub for cleaning the
Yeah.
flat?
Yeah.
You know, completely skewed,
Yeah.
not even, it was the reality of what love meant to me back then.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know, so I think that is the thing, is that the like love changes. And I'm you know, I'm sure, like you, in your second book, the poems, and which were inspired by grief, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's funny that grief is something that's been hanging around for a good few weeks now, in the energy of the UK, and also of the world of grief, of not just loss of a, you know, of a woman
Yeah.
who's is on our money, but also the thinking of the loss of our, you know, if you've lost a mom, I've lost my mom too,
Yeah.
and grandparents and stuff, and it's a time to really reflect on I suppose mortality. So maybe could you give us a little bit of an insight into the second, because I must admit I have to read it.
Yeah. That's fine.
I got to try to find a copy of it, because I'm very interested in how you're linking it all together, the actual style of the book.
Yeah. Definitely.
But you know, you were very young when you
Yeah.
lost your mom.
Yeah.
So what were your memories of, and how did what you remembered of your mom inspire the second book?
Well, I think you're right. I think my second book was, if I can put it in that way, was delayed grief. So I
Mm.
think because I was so young, I was 5 when I lost my mom, and I remember seeing my mom's body, and I didn't even feel anything. It's not that because I was, you know, heartless or anything, because I was so young, I didn't even
Mm.
know the seriousness of what happened. And I think what happened was, my dad did such an exceptional job looking after my brother and I. And I remember, like, growing up, if I think back of my childhood memories, they're only filled with happy memories of the things and efforts that my dad did. And so my dad's a doctor as well, but he single-handedly, I remember, because my brother is 4 years older to me, but my brother was 9, I was 5. And up until now, or like at least let's say, you know, till we finish uni, the amount of efforts he's putting. I remember when I was going to school, he used to cook for us. He used to polish my shoes. He used to have time to go to work, come back. And I think the really positive thing is I never saw him sad, or I can't remember him sad for a single moment in the last like 17, 18 years during our growing up years. And I think now that I've grown up, or I'm at an age where I realize he probably obviously has had so many instances where he was really heartbroken and sad, but he never let it show to us, because we were obviously at that age where we probably would, not understand the seriousness of what was going on. But now he opens up more and things of that sort. So I think what happened was, because he did such an exceptional job, I never missed my mom. And then what happened was, I just accepted her death. I almost, it was almost like I did not miss her. Um, and then what happened was, I started finding out bits and pieces of my mom as I grew up. So it was almost like these pieces of a puzzle that you're solving as you grow. So when I was 10, I found out one small bit of information. When I was 15, I found something else. When I was 20, I found something else. So what was happening was, because I started finding out bits and pieces from everywhere, it was almost like this puzzle. And then I was at the stage where I'm like, what do I believe? What do I like? She was almost like a person from a different lifetime. I can't even picture her in motion. I've just got photographic memories of her, as in, sitting in a place, or standing in a place. I can't picture her talk. I don't know what she sounds like. And I think throughout my teenage years, I somehow just accepted that she passed away. And fortunately or unfortunately, when I was 17 years old, um, um, I found out that she took her own life. And I think me as a teenager at that moment, with this piece of information, I had no clue how to react to it, because I was just not grieving her loss, because I had just accepted that she had passed away. And uh, when I heard it for the first time, you tend to not react to it because you don't know how to react to it. But then what happened was, I noticed as the years went on, like year or two, I started noticing changes in myself. I was more angry. I was getting more restless in life and things of that sort. And I started, and it was almost like I was having a delayed teenage phase, whereas in my, like, I was like 21, and then I'm having all this anger, which is probably something you don't expect. Like post teenage years, you tend to, you tend to mellow down. But I was a very mellow teenager, as in, never got angry, very calm, very composed. And all of a sudden, post my teenage years, in the early, like, 19, 20s, 21, I was to find myself so restless and chaotic. And that's when I realized it's probably because now I'm dealing with the grief that probably, that took place 15 years ago. And I did, I was like, who do I ask? I think throughout our childhood years, because my dad did such a wonderful job, I never had the necessity to talk to him about it, to ask, what happened. Because I almost, for one, thought it was irrelevant, because I never saw any impact of it in my life. But then I had reached the stage where now I started seeing the impact of it. So my mom's sister, my aunt, she lives in Canada. And so I picked up the phone and I said, see, listen, um, I'm going through something which I don't know what's going on. But I also at the same point know that there's this person in my life who's meant to be a lot, like who's meant to be quite impactful in my life, whether they're physically there or not. And I know nothing about them. So could you please tell me what my mom was like? And I think my aunt did an excellent job where she told me what my mom was like from the time she was 5 years old, because they were sisters, and all the way up until, like, her last few days. She just didn't tell me the direct incident of what happened, which I think is, I have to give loads of credits to her, because that made me realize that, each and every single incident in your life, it slowly builds characteristics in your life, which, which you carry with you as you grow, and some become more and more powerful. And you know and that was the first day, Nick. You'll not believe it or not, it was 15 years post my mom's death. I felt, oh my God, I miss my mom. And I cried for the first time 15 years after my mom had passed away. It was the most liberating feeling. It was almost as if I lived 16 years of my life with a clenched fist. And all of a sudden, one fine day, I just let go. You can imagine the blood rushing back in your fists and arms. And I think it was almost like as if my life had changed. I started seeing colors, the trees were greener, people seemed happier, you know. So that's where I was like, you know what? I need to pen down a few of these emotions that I'm going through. And so I decided I'm going to write a book, but I wrote it in such a way that it's a character's life that spans 50 years from the age of 5 to the age of 50 or 55-ish. And he goes through these shades of emotions in his life. And it's like each chapter has like 13 to 14 poems, and each chapter is like one stage of his life. Like, let's say the first few chapters are about him as a kid when he's 5, then 10, 15, 30, 35, 50. And it's somehow I've linked the first few chapters of his life to the last few chapters of his life, where he finds content he accepts, and he remembers how beautiful the essence of a mother is. And that's basically the story I at least try to put out to the world, that, no matter how dark the middle phases of your life get, no matter what challenges you get, hopefully the ending is always, dependent on how we treat our life retrospectively.
Oh, do you have the book near you?
Oh, it's actually downstairs, unfortunately. I
How long,
don't.
how long would it take? I wonder if you just read a page. How
Oh,
long would it take you to get it?
I've got
That's
the original manuscript
you
with
have
me.
it.
So if you just bear with me 1 second.
Yeah. Sorry to spring you this on you. I'm just I really would like to have a flavor of this.
Sorry. So
Oh,
the
yeah,
original manuscript, as you can
yeah,
see.
beautiful.
So, but the
You
problem is,
pick. You pick. Just read something.
okay. If you just give me a second,
Yeah.
because let me.
Yeah, and I'll just you have a little look and I'll reflect on what you said because
Yes,
it really
definitely.
did I think that the process of grief is something that I know there are the 5 stages of grief or the
Yeah.
7 stages of grief depending on what you Google and what you read, and acceptance I think being the last one, and there's stages of like denial and anger and I'm just trying to think about when I lost my mom compared to when I lost my dad, and both were very very different circumstances, and in my life I was just in different places. So I think grief isn't just about it isn't about just losing that person. It's about where you are in your life, and your abilities to be able to see truths around death and around mortality and where you are in your life. Because when my mom passed away, I was not in a good place, and the tears flowed from me, and I needed substances in my body to help me deal with it. And when my father died, some people have said, have you grieved it properly? Because I've shed a few tears in happiness when I think that, even though my dad had a lot of trauma and a lot of troubles, but he did the best that he could. But I do know that he left me with all the tools that he could. And his one thing he said to me when I was 12 years old, I remember growing up in Saskatchewan, and he took me for a drive in the country, and we would often sit and with a pellet gun and shoot like cans on a tree stump. And I remember him saying, Nick, my only job in life is to make you a better man than me.
Yeah.
And I'll and I think that it's only in their passing that you reflect on these moments. Sometimes when they're there, and as has happened with you, and asking people about your mom, that we actually get to see new truths of the fact that our parents did the best that they could, and your father did it, the best that he could in raising you guys, and I think it's in these reflections that we can really see calmness and compassion and vulnerability. So I think it's a beautiful process, even though it can cause a lot of tears.
It
So
can, yeah.
yeah. Well, it doesn't cause, it brings about those emotions. So let the tears flow if you need to. That's my lesson anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, please go
Uh,
ahead with a reading.
So I'm going to read one from like the starting few chapters, just to, because like I said, it's very hard to get it out of context, but let me give you a
Yes.
bit of context. This is from the first chapter, and it's the second part of the first chapter. It's called The Long Dream. So basically, at this stage, the character let's say, is in his 20s, and he's trying to think back to the moments that he remembers this person. So it's like he's in his 20s. He lost, let's say, his mom when he was 5. And he's sitting down and he's trying to think back to the moments he spent with that person. And he's trying to interpret their face, which is obviously not going to be right, because he's just trying to picture a face that he remembers seeing 10, 15 years ago. And he's trying to interpret, were they happy, were they sad? Could I have interpreted it if I was there better? Okay. So it's called The Long Dream. Vehicles passing by, people walking. The scent in the air seems different, yet it feels so familiar. At the same time, very unknown. Why am I being taken back? Who is this holding my hand? It's the same purple haze. I see her eyes. They seem sad, almost as if they're crying of pain. And yet she smiles every time she looks at me. Maybe she sees the reflection of her in me, the kind of person she can be. Or maybe she's deciding to live again through me. Or maybe these are just clouds of judgment that I tell myself every time I am made to travel to my past, in the quest to not find the truth, but just to perhaps live it once again, something that almost seems like a lifetime ago.
Oh, beautiful. You know, I have absolutely, like, without any doubt, what comes to me is the love from a mother to a child as you read that. You know, and the trials and tribulations that young moms can have. You know, I think about my mom, who was, you know, but a child herself when she had my oldest sister, and immigrated to a new country in 1967 with a 2-year-old, you know, and she was 20, and having my sister, and then me, and then some problems with miscarriages, and, you know, a real turbulent early 20s. And growing up, like, this is the one thing, when it's funny, um, when my mom passed away and I read at her funeral, the one word that I used to describe my mom was love,
Yeah.
because she was she was, for me, an angel on earth, who all she knew what to do, despite working and raising a family and, you know, doing all the stuff around the house. She's such a hard worker. All she knew what to do was love,
Yeah.
you know, and in that love and a lot of tears, you know, and a lot of sadness and a lot of loneliness. But all through all of that, I just knew, I can just feel that all she ever had for our little family of my dad and my 2 sisters was just love. So thank you for reading that, because it really, you know, I cry very easily, and I'm holding back tears right now because I've cried on the last 2 of these lives. So I don't want to, but I just want to I love my mom. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much for taking me back. I'd not thought about this for a really long time. So I think it was really good, going back to those emotions. And I think that's the beauty of writing, is where I think you realize that you're not so alone, that there are so many people who resonate with the things that you're going through. And they may not know you personally. They don't know who you are. They don't know where you are. They don't know what you're doing. But there's that one line or one phrase or one paragraph, and they read it and they're like, oh, I'm not alone. And I think that feeling is a blessing, I feel, because so often than not, we don't even realize the kind of things that people are going through, you know. And no matter how much they try to express it or the other person tries to understand, it's very difficult. And for someone to find something, a comfort in reading a line, and for them to feel, okay, I'm not alone. There's someone else who feels exactly what I'm feeling. And that kind of makes them feel not so alone in the world. And I think that's really something that inspires me to write, if I have to be honest.
Oh, please do keep doing it, because it does. And I think that as you're speaking, it really brings home that we're all individuals on this world, but yet we all have this need to connect.
Yeah.
And, you know, for so long I operated as a silo of just Nick self-will. I can solve all my own problems. I'll bottle in all my emotions because I don't want people to think I'm weak.
Yeah.
Or, so my ability to be vulnerable, which is
Yeah.
what you do in your writing, was nil, non-existent.
Yeah.
And I think it's just in really in just our being humanness, if we can bring ourselves into a place to be a bit vulnerable,
Yeah.
to tell people I'm not feeling great, to tell people that I'm having a bad day, to say I need a little bit of me time, or to read a book, that can bring something out. It's normally, it is probably, again, um, times of year, you know, anniversaries of people passing. And I know my dad died 5 years ago. So, and then the Queen passing, it's a lot of grief going on. And I suppose that's what brings up these feelings of just, I miss my mom, I miss my dad, and my family means so much to me. And it brings about some sadness, and it will bring about tears, but that isn't a bad thing. And I need to tell people that I do this, because others will then say, yeah, me too, just like you said, and not being alone. So I think the lesson in all of this is that don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost selfish being vulnerable, because people need to hear
Yeah.
that I'm struggling, I'm not doing well. They don't need to hear I'm great, because
No. Yeah.
when I'm not,
Yeah.
because they can see through the lies.
Yeah.
So I think vulnerability is such a beautiful trait or a value that I cherish deeply. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering now, as we are kind of running out of time,
Yeah.
where are you going to express yourself, in this new stage in your life as being an author of two books? And what's coming up? Where are your emotions and
Well,
being led to put pen to
well,
paper?
to be honest, unfortunately, right now, medicine is taking up a lot of my life. But I love medicine. I could not have imagined doing anything else in my life. But I do see myself writing more, and as I grow older, I see myself doing it more and more rather than the opposite. And currently, I've got three plots which I've already started working on. It's quite so now that I've gotten a hang, so I think the first two books were very, I've written it because I just had to get it out, but I was not so much thinking of, let me frame it in the right way, because there's so much of skill and art behind writing, which I think now I've got the patience and understanding of a little. I'm planning to write three different books, which are three different genres. So I'm writing one book, which is a thriller. It's just a pure thriller, and I'm really excited about it. It's one of those plots up, so I've got all the characters ready and the plot lines ready. I literally just have to pen it down. And so I'm really excited for that. And I'm writing a fantasy novel, which is going to be a trilogy, so it's three parts. That still has a lot of work needed to go into it, but I've just got like the foundations of it to set. And the other one is obviously a tragic romance, because no matter how hard I try to go away from the genre, something keeps dragging me back into the tragic romance, or like so. These are the three books. I'm really excited about them, and I think it's based on my mood. When I'm willing, when I'm very quite free-minded and not very, I'm just like it's a normal day. I just try to write more of my thriller, but if let's say I'm having a very mellow week, then I probably write a bit of the tragic romance. And so
Yeah.
it's very exciting. So I've got these three things sorted. I just need to find some time to start penning them down, hopefully in the next 3-5 years.
Whatever you do, please make sure you have time for you. Don't burn yourself out, okay?
To be honest, that is me time. Like for me, writing is me time. So I
Okay.
don't see it as a thing that I have to do. It's an escape from everything that I actually do. So
Yeah. Rithvik Rai, you are an amazing man, with amazing stories. 45 minutes just doesn't do it justice. Maybe when you get a little bit more of pen to paper with the other stories, we can have you on for an update for that. But
yeah, definitely. It was great. I think you're an amazing conversationalist. Like you said, I didn't realize 45 minutes were done.
yeah.
Until you pointed it out. Thank you so much, Nick, for having me.
Oh,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
And please send me any links to your books,
Yep, definitely.
And I'll put them in the Facebook feed. And if anybody's interested in reading Rithvik Rai's books, let me know, and I'll point you in the right direction. But from me, Rithvik, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Have a nice night. Good
Okay.
night. Take care.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for joining us on a Monday night or whenever you do watch this. And stay tuned, like I say, for the links to the book. And then don't forget to join me on Thursday for another tough through tender conversation. But until then, thanks a lot for joining us. See you later. Bye.
Bye. See you.